So on behalf of Arrow, we want to thank you for joining today's session as part of Expo 2020. We've titled the conference Catching Up and Looking Ahead because we want to offer our community a chance to do just that, check in on topics that are important to you, and catch up and connect with one another as this, quote, year of disruption comes to a close. This is Arrow's first virtual conference, so thanks for your patience as we encounter any bumps along the way. Expo is free this year, and we welcome contributions of all sizes. If you would like to help sponsor our event, please make a contribution at our website, and I'll put our website in the chat box in case you'd like to participate tonight. And if we could just all demonstrate our excellent Zoom skills by just using the chat box to write your name and your affiliation, it would be great. And that way I get an easy list of who's actually on the call, and we can just connect, and it introduces ourselves to each other a little bit. Okay. I am going to rename myself because I am more than just Arrow. And then I'm going to introduce us to tonight's session. So tonight is looking back on the year 2020 and planning ahead through the food system lens sector of local food sourcing restaurants. And tonight we have, oh, excuse me, bear with me 1 second. So tonight we have, what happened? Okay, sorry. Tonight we have Chef Micah Eller, Director of Sales, Events, and Catering at Oddfellow Inn and Farm and at Big Sky Hospitality Group in Helena, and also the creator and director of Meadowlark Music Festival. Micah is a passionate local food enthusiast, and we also have Rob Clagitt. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name just correctly, so please correct me if I mispronounced it. Oh, Clagitt. He's executive chef at Flathead Lake Lodge and has been so for 2 years, and has a deep appreciation for locally sourced food and strengthening our local food systems. So, Michael, would you like to start?
Sure, I'd love to. So just kind of reflecting back on 2020, I joined the Big Sky Hospitality Group, which encompasses the Smoke Jumper Station, which is the concession at the airport, Oddfellow Inn and Farm, which just opened in June of 2019, and the recently incorporated Maison, which is the French restaurant that is out at Oddfellow Inn and Farm. I joined the team originally to be the events and catering coordinator as well as direct sales. And we saw a record-breaking year, and we're on just the trajectory to really blow 2019 out of the water. And then March hit, and we canceled every single event and really had to think about how we were going to pivot and diversify what we were doing in order to stay solvent. We did end up closing the Smoke Jumper restaurant. We have 2 restaurants there, one which is downstairs, which was available to people pre-security, and then another restaurant upstairs, which we had temporarily closed at the beginning of the pandemic. The one downstairs has continued to be closed. We haven't had any catering sales. I think we had one Christmas party set up for this next month, and it was just canceled. So it was not really meant to be this year, nor that would we want to really encourage people to gather in that same way. So as far as things that we've done to kind of change up what we're doing, I mean, it's been really difficult for every restaurant. It's a really strange time. When the pandemic first came about for Smoke Jumper, we started doing some delivery and takeout that was really popular while restaurants were closed. But as soon as they opened back up again, our sales completely dropped and we couldn't keep the staff on that we needed. As far as all the events goes, we've had to cancel quite a few of them, but we ended up actually putting on one of our own events this summer called Harvestival. I don't know if all of you are aware, but the Oddfellow came about 200 feet from burning down this summer. There was a grass fire right outside of the property, and because of firefighters' quick action, they were able to save the property. But basically, we had opened up all of the gates and just hoped that the animals would run away because they had closed off all the roads. We couldn't get any of them evacuated. It was a really terrifying situation on top of losing all of our business pretty much. So we kind of banded together and decided to throw a big COVID safe event. We have 41 acres out on Oddfellow Inn and Farm. So we had some food and music, let people do farm tours, and limited it to 250 people so that everyone could really spread out across the property. And we're able to raise $5,000 for the Lewis and Clark Rural Fire Council, which was really exciting. And then the summer also, we decided to just double down on the craziness and open a French restaurant out at Oddfellow. So we opened Maison, which is a French farm to table restaurant. We have a really awesome chef who joined us from Napa Valley. And we just had our grand opening this last week, actually. We've done a soft opening all throughout the summer. And of course, it's just been a total nightmare getting it started. But we offer private dining. We had the patio open all summer. And we had a really great weekend this last weekend. So it just feels like things are finally starting to turn around after a really, really difficult 8 months. So those are a couple of the things that we've been working on. CSAs are another part of the Oddfellow that we took part in the farmers market. And when the farmers market closed, in my free time, I started the Meadowlark Farmers Market since we weren't able to do the music festival. And this winter, we are offering winter meal kits out of Maison for those people who are nervous about going out to eat. They can recreate the food at home, or we can do takeout or to-go items for them. And we've also partnered with our other business, Smoke Jumper, in order to do wine subscriptions as well. So it's really caused us to be, well, panicky at first, but we had to get creative with some stuff. And I think that we have some pretty cool products coming out there now.
And do you source all the, is most of your food sourced through the farm at Oddfellow?
We're able to do a lot of the produce. Our farm manager actually joined us about mid-spring, and he did some incredible work in that short amount of time. We were able to grow some stuff for the restaurant and have surplus for the CSA and farmers market. So this next summer, we're really ramping up to have most of our production happen in-house. Right now, we're able to use our own duck, chicken, and turkey eggs. We're licensed to sell those as well, which we're always selling out of them. The ducks can't keep up. But right now, one of the projects I'm working on is getting us a poultry processing facility. And we just received a $25,000 grant from the state of Montana to jumpstart that. So we'll be processing, hopefully by this next spring, ducks, chickens, turkeys. I think we're also going to be doing some quail as well. And then hopefully doing some small mammals too. We're raising pigs out there, some Mingalitsa cross. We have, just a total cluster of different animals out there too that are just like kind of rescue creatures. We have a mini donkey named Jethro and a bunch of goats. So we're working on our HACCP plan for utilizing our goat's milk in house too. But the farm manager, Alan, is currently working on some hydroponic operations in the basement so that we can continue to have fresh herbs and fresh greens throughout the wintertime.
That is all very cool. I was going to ask, are you going to be able to process other people's poultry or just your own?
Right now, we're looking at a grower producer's exemption, which allows us to process 20,000 units in a year without having a USDA inspected facility. So I don't think at this time we'll probably do that until we are able to get a USDA facility. But I think that it's our desire to really ramp up that production over the next couple of years. When Paul and Jared first approached me about working with them at Oddfellow, that was the first thing that they wanted to do was the heritage breed poultry operation. So that's always been kind of on the back burner for this business. And I think we've just been backtracked because of COVID and because we had to put attention other places. But yeah, we're hoping that we'll be able to ramp up so we can have some large production of our own, and maybe that at that time we'll be able to also process other people's poultry.
Could you say that number again, Micah? What was the number you could do without USDA inspection?
It's 20,000, and that's for poultry and rabbits.
20,000 animals, units?
Mm-hmm. I believe that's correct. Yeah, I think that it's 20,000 animals, whereas usually a unit is like 4 poultry. I'm still learning.
I'm looking at your website, your team here, Jethro and Lily. The gang. Looks good.
And we have some terrifying emus out there too. They're definitely my least favorite of all the animals.
I think they made the website.
What's
Ajax,
that?
is that Ajax and Friends?
Ajax and Friends. Yeah, Ajax and Ion. And we've got the dog Blue out there now, who is our big, I think it's Kingle Turkish farm dog. He's great. I mean, when we had that fire this summer, he stuck around with the animals the entire time. So super loyal, awesome farm dog. But yeah, I mean, I guess one of the other big things I'd say that we did to kind of, pivot is that we really poured some money into marketing. My title too now is Director of Marketing. It kind of just changed up as soon as the pandemic hit. It's like, you have this department as well. And we have a really great team there. We have somebody who works as our concierge, so we can really put a special touch on when people call in. We can really like concentrate on what their preferences are, what their allergies are, and just have like a specialized touch. And I think that that's been a really important thing for kind of setting us apart from other restaurants at this point. And I'm sure that you'll notice the marketing we have around town. We have a billboard now up on Highway 12, and we just sent out a mailer recently with our wine subscriptions, and we just came out with our commercial too. So there's been a lot of stuff that we've been like pouring our time and energy into, and it's finally starting to pay off. And it's really exciting because you can really take a leap with all this stuff and take a risk, and you don't know if that risk is going to pay off. So it feels like a little bit of a relief this week to see some of that.
Do you know if most of your clientele is local or tourists visiting?
This summer it was a lot of visiting tourists, especially because they were staying at the inn. But we've noticed a lot more locals have recently discovered us now that we've put out some of the marketing. We've noticed a lot of Helenans who are coming and using it as the new spot to hang out, especially because we do have those private dining rooms. I think that that's a really attractive thing for a lot of people. But yeah, the summer we always have a ton of people coming through, and the summer tourists, probably less this year than usual, but we still had people staying there who were excited about the fact that they were able to eat at the restaurant and stay completely separate from everyone else. Oh, Robin, I think you're muted there.
Gosh, sorry. So I have this a question that comes up for me, Micah, because you have been the chef at various restaurants in the area in the past, right? And I'm just curious from your experience there, these other restaurants, when in Helena, when you're endeavoring to source locally, what are the resources that are available to you in Helena?
The resources have really expanded in the last couple of years. And I feel like that's because there's been more chefs who are interested in serving local food, and because the clientele are starting to demand it. I mean, before it was like the No Sweat Cafe and Benny's Bistro were the ones who served the local food. And there seems to be
Is she frozen? I thought she was just counting.
No, I think she's frozen.
Okay.
What were the 2 restaurants she named? Benny's Bistro and
the No Sweat Cafe.
Mm.
Mhm.
You froze there for a while right after you said No Sweat and Benny's.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's okay. We
So, some of the places that some of the ones that I actually worked with when I was at the Montana Club don't exist anymore. Like the Montana Meat Cooperative was a really cool cooperative that would source from different beef producers around Montana and allow chefs to get different cuts rather than purchasing like a half a cow. That was really helpful. But I think that there are a lot more resources now than there were even 5 years ago. We use the Western Montana Growers Co-op. There is the KJN Sheep Mountain Creamery right in the Helena Valley, which is such a cool resource that I really wish that everyone in Helena would utilize more, because I just think it's something really unique that we have out here. We also utilize product from like Amalthea Dairy, Tucker Family Farms. And then during the summertime, there's always just like purchasing things from the farmers market. But it's been really helpful for us to be able to grow some of our own product as well, just so that we can kind of continue to have that local touch for the greens and produce portion of it. Because usually in Montana, that just stops at a certain point.
Yeah.
Has the business tried to do a cost benefit analysis on that, or is it they're not trying to do that because the value is just what it is?
Yeah, I think that's just the thing is that's
Oh, she froze again.
She did.
Bummer.
I don't know if this helps. If you're frozen, she probably can't read that. She'll come back. Nope. So we didn't hear your response. You froze again.
Sorry, folks. I'm switching over to a different network to make sure that this isn't going to keep happening. So no, it's been kind of just part of the whole business plan is to have that great local food. It just never was really even another question to go in any sort of other route. It's just a more attractive thing for us, and hopefully for the clientele, and we're seeing a good return from it. So I think it's what people in Helena want to see.
That's great.
Pictures are gorgeous.
We just had another photo shoot this last week too. We got to try everything on the a la carte menu, and had Garrett from Floating Leaf come in and take some photos, and they're so great. So you'll be seeing some new food pictures pretty soon here too. But I think one of the other things that's really strengthened people throughout this pandemic is just seeing where you can partner in as many ways as possible. And I think that as far as local food goes, the more you can cross promote, the better. So every single time we have something with a local beef farmer, we'll post it on Instagram or something like that and tag them, and then they'll usually cross promote us for something else. And I think it's a feel good sort of thing, but then it's also just beneficial for everyone to reach a wider audience.
Yeah. Yeah. And Rob, what you want to share about your experience from the Flathead Lake Lodge perspective?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I mean, I imagine a lot of us had a lot of the same kind of struggles initially. I felt really lucky because at the lodge, we already, we don't open until the beginning of May typically. And then we shut down for the winter early October. So all of this was starting to unfold and we weren't open yet. So I kind of got to sit down with a couple folks and develop a risk management strategy, which was difficult because everything continued to evolve as everything, we continued to learn more and more about the virus. But from a business standpoint, for the lodge, it was a lot about finding creative ways to control the hospitality element. because we have guests who are coming in for week-long stays, a lot of them were folks who were trying to escape even thinking about the virus, but realistically, we had a responsibility to manage that and keep everyone safe. So that proved really difficult. But as far as food production went, I thought everything went really smoothly, and in large part because, you know, I think local produce specifically, working with that network, you know, that Brooke and Sean have, really kind of bailed us out from a lot of the issues that you run into trying to procure things in these times from a lot of the big guys like Cisco or whoever. So that was super helpful. Yeah, and I don't know, I have a hard time. I think about my job very much as just always being adaptable. So I don't want to say that it felt like any other year, but honestly, like that's just kind of how I tried to treat it. Sure, there's a different set of parameters and issues, but it was easy to focus on the positives because all of a sudden folks, I think, got to see that how important your local infrastructure really is. So that was kind of an amazing takeaway from the year for me.
How far beyond you did people know about the local food infrastructure at the lodge? Is that something you share with guests, or?
It's definitely something that I share with guests, and I talk to my staff about it a lot. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of difficult. One of the things that that I've been trying to work into the lodge is because we're so insular from the community anyway. We've talked about a lot of different ways that we could extend our season and start to be open to our community. So, you know, like those promotion things that Micah was talking about, for example, that's the kind of thing I would love to be involved with. It just seems silly for me right now because it's almost just a story for them, because it's some, you know, family from New York, you know, and they're here and they stay at the lodge for a week and then they leave. You know, which is tough. It's tough feeling disconnected from the community in that kind of way. But I mean, even if they're not from the area, I know that they all could see the positive impact, you know, specifically even just in the quality of food when we source all of those things locally and have fresh ingredients. So, so it's certainly a big focal point of what I talk to guests about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like it's actually it would be a different business model to extend your season, if you will, to be available to locals. Yeah.
For sure, but that's already something. So, you know, our family season really is just June, July, and August.
Mm-hmm.
So we already kind of find different ways to utilize the lodge. We call it the shoulder seasons,
Mm-hmm.
before and after families get here. And, you know, it would be better for the quality of life of employees that we have if we can employ more people year round. I don't know. It's a big focal point, not just for myself, but for a lot of folks at the lodge. And I don't know. I'm excited about being able to do things that connect us more to the valley than we currently are.
Mm-hmm. Were you there when they had the Crown of the Continent festivals?
I was not. The last one that they did was the year before I got here.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've talked about doing different events like that. We were planning on trying to put one together for this fall, and you know, obviously we pushed that aside pretty quickly because we kind of had to maintain what we had.
Yeah. And do you source your meats locally or through one of the meat co-ops?
So right now, most of them are not sourced locally, and that's something that I've spent a lot of this off season connecting with a couple different folks, trying to get that worked out. Because some of the people that I worked with my first year here just couldn't keep up with the amount of volume that we do. And that's an issue that I'm trying to be as creative as I can be with, because one of the tough things about trying to source, mostly local foods for the lodge is during a normal season, we're serving 140 guests the same exact meal. It's not an a la carte menu. So all of a sudden, like there's ways to be creative about that with produce. But when it comes to the cut of meat, when that's the thing that all of the guests are focusing on, it's pretty difficult to say, hey, every week I need, 140 beef tenderloins from you, and, this, that, and the other. That puts a huge burden on folks that produce at the scale that most local farmers do.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think part of that burden kind of comes down to me trying to be strategic and find interesting ways to kind of work around that and maybe alter guest expectations a little bit about it.
How many weeks are you open?
So that family season is 12 weeks.
12 weeks.
It's funny, that makes me think about the producer partnership, or whatever it's called, over in Livingston, which is basically donating. They're raising money to process meat so they can donate it to food banks. But the food banks don't need the tenderloin, right? So could that, maybe they've already done this. I presume they have, because they'd be crazy not to, where you take the high quality cuts and either the families that are donating the meat get it back probably, or maybe there's a way to buy in bulk from a source like that, where they've worked extra hard to get the local processing. So they've got that piece of the picture figured out to some degree. They're not shipping them out of state and then back. At least that's my understanding, that most of them are getting processed in big timber, I think. Anyway, just combining these different pathways for different parts of an animal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's, the cool thing about an opportunity like that is that's like a lot of the nature of, like a lot of chefs joke about how when you look at food trends, especially lately, everything's been going back to what was traditionally like poor people's food, because it's all the leftovers. It's all the things that like we don't really, nobody's going to the supermarket and seeking that out anymore. So then chefs find ways to make that seem like the nicest thing ever. Which
on the hog.
Yeah. And, I think that that's great. And I think that shows, there's supposed to be more burden on the chef than what a lot of us have been taking on in recent years. I think a lot of chefs are getting used to kind of sitting back and, relying on these, being able to just click a button and get whatever you want at all times. I think that makes you a worse chef. And I think that it makes you, kind of a maybe not as active a member of your local foodways as you should be. And that's not me pointing the finger. There's so much imperfection about what I do. But I try to stay conscious about it and find workarounds like what you're talking about. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah. I was chuckling and looking up something completely unrelated. Sorry, I'll share it later. It's not critical.
Rob, do you guys do all prefix meals there?
Yes, but so it's kind of tricky. Basically, we have, I would say like 2/3 of our services are really just buffet. And then all of our dinners are plated. And The plated is basically like a prefix menu. That changes in the shoulder season, where we, certain groups that we bring in, specifically we do wine dinners where it's more like, 5-6 course wine pairing dinner. And in the summertime, it's literally just, it's prefix, but it's 3 courses, just salad course, entree, dessert.
Mm-hmm. And then as far as the buffet goes, what are you guys doing for risk management on that? Because I know for us, when we were doing the catering, if we have a buffet, now we have to have somebody serving it. It can't be like people going through the line.
Yes, and that was honestly the biggest thing this year. And again, I was really grateful to be able to sit down before we opened for the season and start to think about those things, because I was able to kind of warn other departments, but especially, my boss, who was going to be looking at labor costs, just how much labor it was going to be for us to safely, or as safely as we could, be open. Because even outside of just having folks serving on the buffet line, we had a regular schedule of people going and sanitizing every surface, after a certain amount of time. I mean, and the lodge is not a small place. It ended up being a huge burden on labor for sure. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people may have overlooked through all of this.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, the few events
So-
that we put on were a total nightmare with labor, because it was just a bunch of costs that we weren't anticipating.
So for someone who's not in your business at all, what's an estimate of the burden? Like it's in terms of people or hours or dollars or whatever, anything? Or just-
I mean, so like this year I had, so just in food and beverage, I had probably like 31 employees, I think it was, including myself. And for the 12 weeks of family season, probably all of them had at least, like I was able to keep everybody below 47 hours, but everybody was between 40 and 47. So that overtime cost was a pretty big killer. That really added up. And I mean, thankfully, one of the things that really works in our favor is, as far as operational costs, we're able to keep them lower than a lot of folks who do the quality of food and service that we do, because we have a tip pool with every employee at the lodge is a part of the tip pool, and we have a lot of really generous guests, so we're able to offset, like a lot of folks who haven't worked at the lodge before. Typically, when I'm talking to them about their hourly wage, they're a little bit concerned at first, because they think that I'm, maybe not being honest about how much, like we have a breakdown of the average per hour that they will get in tip share, and it sounds fake. So that's something that definitely works in our favor, and I feel grateful, because in a year like this, it could have been so much worse for us. But I don't have really a specific dollar amount though of what that looked like.
Hey, Micah, speaking of labor, when it comes to like on-farm production, if you're scaling up in the chickens, and do you have people on staff, or do you have access to anybody with that skill set in Helena?
So our farm manager, Alan, joined our team from, I think he was living in Oregon before this. And he's super skilled. We're really, really lucky to have him on our team. And he's the constant out there. And then throughout the summer, we had a couple woofers who lived on site. as well as we have a lot of crossover employees because we have 3 businesses. There's some folks who will work in housekeeping, and then they'll split their time between that and the farm. Or if they're like the barista out at the airport, sometimes they'll pick up more hours at the farm as well. So, excuse me, we have a couple people who are skilled in the farming aspect of things that can also teach people when they come out there. The woofers are specifically coming out there to learn, and it's nice because it's also free labor, but we pay for their room and board as well. And then we had some folks this summer who are just interested in coming out and just farming with us. So we had random community volunteers come out and help us process veggies and feed the animals. And I think it's just kind of it's an attractive atmosphere for a lot of folks to be in. So that's a definite draw. We were definitely understaffed in the kitchen for quite a while this summer. In addition to my marketing and sales duties, I was kind of acting sous chef for a while there. And so I was like, we have to hire on some more people. But we have a great crew. I mean, our sous chef is Matt Pittman, who is the executive chef over at the Montana Club most recently. And he was my sous chef when I was over there as well. So I think that we just have a really, really strong team of people. And I was just thinking about how we've just doubled down on building that team this last year. And I really appreciate the proprietors, how they've like really taken a risk with that, because I think that it is a huge risk when you're paying more people to come on board, but then it's really paying off in just the product that we're able to put out there now.
Is there chatter in terms of, because I think of it in the Bozeman market and I've said this a number of times, but if restaurants are going to go under, I don't want it to be our farm to table restaurants, because those are the ones that are actually trying to walk the walk and support our farmers. Mm-hmm. Is there chatter about where are the limited restaurant dollars? Where are people going? Is it easier as a farm to table restaurant where you are? And from what you've heard, are they surviving more, or is it harder, or is it just no different? It just depends on how.
I mean, I think everyone's just really suffering right now. And I think people who are working in restaurants are really suffering right now too. I mean, we've seen a lot of community spread in Lewis and Clark County, especially. And you see on Broadway closes down every, month or so. There's just like all these places that have to close down because their workers are being exposed to a larger amount of risk. So I don't know if it's necessarily that the farm table places are any luckier in that sort of situation, because I know that, speaking from my family's experience too, the No Sweat has come close to shutting down multiple times this past year, just because one of the main things that restaurants thrive on is volume, and that's just been something that we can't do at all. They diversified and they started doing burger nights and things like that, but some people's experience can't be transferred into to-go items. Some of it is about just going in and being part of that whole atmosphere. So that has been one of the biggest things. So my mom, when I was younger, used to always say, we work in food service, so we'll never go hungry. And I think a pandemic is the one time when that's not a correct assumption.
Who knew?
Yeah.
I'm sitting here looking at the letter that got sent out today by, Brad Griffin, who's the head of the president of the Montana Restaurant Association, mm-hmm. with the national line that, over 100,000 restaurants have closed, 10,000 more than since our last survey. 52% of former owners say they won't return to the industry. So it just feels like it's apples and oranges in terms of the types of restaurants in different markets, but it is interesting. And the fear that's out there when you have people like, celebrity chef Tom, whatever his name is, from New York, who's saying, yeah, it's projected as many as 90% of restaurants could go out of business, which is a slight exaggeration, but terrifying. Yeah. So folks are definitely nervous here in the Valley.
Yeah, and I think that part of the big part of this is that restaurants have such a small margin of profit anyways. And a lot of what you're depending on is future sales, pretty much. You're purchasing items with 90-day net, and then having to sell that product. So a lot of people, when March rolled around, lost a ton of that lead time. And then we're talking about endemic issues with the restaurant industry in general, which I could really stand on my soapbox about, but like how we aren't charging our customers enough for a product as it is in order to pay people a livable wage a lot of the time. So, I mean, there's just a lot of issues that were already issues before this that were just magnified tenfold by the pandemic.
Yeah. Robin just asked me to share the letter in the chat, which is, there were 7 different farm to table restaurant owners, chefs who got together to write a piece in the Chronicle, just expressing their concern.
I mean, I lived in Portland and Chicago before coming back to Montana, and some of the best restaurants in those areas have closed their doors forever. Like restaurant groups that I thought would last for decades are just not able to make it. And we're lucky in Montana that we've had a little bit of a softer entry into this pandemic. It took a little bit of a longer time for it to get here. But in Chicago, I mean, they closed down restaurants just in general. So they weren't able to continue to get any money in, and there's not a lot of relief for them either. So people can be as creative as they want, but they really need to have a little bit of support as well.
And Micah, I have a question. You mentioned that, already you're not charging really what you would need to adequately represent the costs for local food. And I'm curious, what would be the percentage increase if you know of what you would be charging if you were charging to represent the cost of the food?
Oh, I think that we're charging a good amount of margin for Maison. I think that's not, I think I was mostly referring to based on most restaurants' labor percentage. I think that we're really lucky in the management that we have and the ownership at the farm and in the restaurant group in general. Paul and Jared both come from a background of hospitality, so they pay livable wages. We're working on getting health insurance for all employees. Everyone gets a little bit of paid time off. So I think that we've worked that into our culture just in general, and that was something that Paul and Jared started with Smoke Jumper. They started using local products and charging accordingly for it. But I think that a lot of places kind of get into trying to draw the masses in by undercharging and then under valuing their labor a lot of the time. And a lot of restaurant workers just kind of take that abuse because that's something that we've all kind of come up in the industry with. I was working in Chicago 80 hours a week, and I was getting paid $9 an hour, and they cut my hours every single day and only paid me for 10 hours a day when I was working 14 or 15. So that's a standard in a lot of restaurants, to completely abuse the staff that are bringing the food to the table.
Rob is nodding every time you talk. That's why I was really curious. Apparently this is important. Wow. Oy.
But I've heard a lot of folks say, if we can make it till April, we're going to make it through this thing. I'm really hoping that the winter isn't the kiss of death for a lot of restaurants in Montana, because we can't do the outdoor dining anymore. I really hope that people just kind of throw those funds into their local restaurants and just help them through. I mean, it's just, these are some of the toughest months as it is.
Anyway, yeah.
And I mean, just to speak in numbers wise, like last year in December, just at the Oddfellow alone, we made $90,000 in catering. And this month we've made $300 in catering.
Wow.
Oh my God. I don't even know how to process that information.
Yeah.
Is all of that catering on site, or do you do offsite catering as well?
We had been doing a few offsite caterings. This summer, we did a lot of offsite catering bars because we're able to do alcohol through the smoke jumper. But for food catering, we were kind of moving away from that. And we have, let's see here, 2 locations at the airport, 3 now that there's a new space upstairs. One's a large conference room, which used to be one of our large sellers because it was, the airport conference would go there, or like the large holiday parties with places like Northwestern Energy and the big groups in town here. And then at the Oddfellow, we hosted more of like the private parties, plus a couple weddings this summer as well. But we try to stick away from the offsite food catering just because we weren't seeing much of a return on it. We're going to start offering some offsite chef catering, but offering it at a much higher margin.
Sorry, you guys could hear me typing. I was putting that random aside into the chat box, which has absolutely nothing to do with our conversation, but it's a movie our family watched recently that was fun. I don't know if you guys have seen The 100-Foot Journey. It's about 2 warring restaurants across the road from each other in France.
Well, that's one good thing that's come out of this. There's always a little bit of friendly competition between businesses, but I've seen a lot more collaboration this last year. Everyone's just really trying to make sure that everyone makes it.
We saw some of that collaboration with some of the restaurants we work with, particularly like early on, like in April and May in Columbia Falls. It's a small town, and some of the restaurants there, they got together and selected the days that they would be closed, and then the other one would be open, so at least they would get like to push that business there for those days. On the weekends they overlap, but during the week they staggered which days that they were open and which days they were closed with each other. I thought that was really awesome.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, we're doing another collaboration right now too. Gulch Distillers had to close their tasting room, but they're still selling some of their product, and they've been really great partners to us over the years.
Hey, Robin, can you turn on the screen sharing function? Do you have control of that?
I do. Here, I just have to make you a co-host. You can now share your screen. See, we missed you, Micah, in the. Yeah, that's okay. I'm just trying to remember when you cut out. I forget. Does somebody remember?
So for the Gulch Distillers, we're working with them they worked with us on a cocktail menu, but they also had just purchased a can seamer so they could do some canned cocktails and got the go ahead from the DOR. And then the DOR called them back and said that they weren't able to do canned cocktails because it counted as to-go drinks. So we're working with them and creating some canned cocktails that we're going to be selling at the airport as well, which we're really excited about.
I was just going to share that the price of pork looks like it's going to come down. Can you see my screen? Oh, here we go.
No. So, okay.
Here we go.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Are those built or is that an artist rendering?
2.1 million hogs in a year out of one facility.
Oh my God.
Oh, I bet that smells good.
Oh, really?
Anyways. I don't know how to unshare.
You at the top, very top in the center, it says stop screen sharing in red or green, I forget. Do you see it?
No, you can shut me off if you need to. Oh, there it is.
Let's
Yeah,
see.
there we go.
Wow.
There you go.
Oh my God.
Well, folks, my sweetheart is making me some dinner right now, so I might.
It's after 6:15. Thank you so much for joining us, Micah. Really appreciated it.
Yeah. Thank you guys, and thank you for all you do. And Rob, I'm looking forward to coming up there sometimes and trying your food.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise. I'll have to make it over there.
Awesome. Cool. Well, you guys have a great night.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to take this time and take off too, although I got to say that hog photo was quite the point to leave on.
Sorry.
Oh,
Good Lord. Yeah, and it is after 6:15, and this is only scheduled till 6:15. So please feel free to complete and end. And if you'd like to hang out and chat, that is okay as well.
Figure we talked about container growing of vegetables. I had to show that pork farmers have to deal with the same thing.
That's kind of wrong in so many ways, I'm sorry to say. Rob.
yeah, that's the opposite of what we should be doing.
Suppose that's how they're trying to feed the masses in China.
Hey, 1 billion people want to eat pork.
Well,
Oh
and
my
you know, if that were a solution for world hunger, I'm not judging it, but I have my doubts that that's going to really solve any world hunger issues.
I'm not sure what the ecosystem services are on that site either. Oh well.
I cannot wrap my head around it. There's just a picture of a bunch of little piglets waiting for the elevator. I just like, what is the music they're going to pick for that? You know, like there's so many questions to ask.
So many. And that it's okay. They feel like it's okay.
I'm going to make that my new Zoom background photo.
That's good. That's awesome.
Oh my God. Okay. Wow. Well, Rob, you probably have access to all the information you need. And if you are looking for more resources for sourcing anything for your restaurant, are you familiar with the Abundant Montana directory?
I am not.
So if you go to the Aero Montana website, it's aeront.org. There is something called Abundant Montana. Yes, that's correct. And it's a directory with it has lots of producers and, you know, people who raise animals and make sheep cheeses and all sorts of things. Anyways, it could be a resource for you if you're looking for additional different foods. It's a directory. So
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. And, you know, like I said, I've definitely been chatting with a couple folks in the area, which has been helpful. But yeah, I mean, the more resources, the better, you know, because I don't think I'm going to be able to find just one solution to this problem, and I'll probably be changing it as long as I'm here. So,
right. Yeah, and one of the reasons I mentioned it is because, you know, I don't know whether what I'm about to mention will be a resource for you or not, given your volume, but, you know, there are, just as there used to be a meat co-op in Helena, there are a couple of those types of things, you know, consolidators or a meat resource company that knows various different ranchers in the area. So maybe that's an option.
well, and I have been really lucky with the folks down at Lower Valley Processing.
Yes.
They've done a really good job of, you know, I don't think that they have the time to help me utilize all of their information in the way that I would like. But they've given me a lot of introductions, which is really helpful. And as I've been ordering with them in the last 2 years, they've been a big help in starting to push for the right thing.
That's great. That's great. That's great. My one more thought, I'm curious about this. because my story, tell me if I'm wrong, but my story is that you have done, you've been an executive chef in others, in urban cities, in other states. And I'm curious what the local product, be it produce, meat, or cheese or something like that, what the prices are here in Montana versus anything you might have sourced in those other restaurants.
I would say very comparable. The nice thing from my perspective, being here, is that so especially when I was in Richmond, Virginia, I loved a lot of the farmers that I worked with. A lot of the product that I got from them was fantastic. And I don't blame them for this in any way, but because it's such a competitive market, some of them would build their name to a point where they would be able to really leverage restaurants. And I think that they were as ethical as you can be when you're doing something like that. But it was the type of thing we would have regular conversations. A lot of them, it was in their best interest to take care of the chefs. So they'd have us out to the property, and, we'd talk to them all the time, and we had a good relationship. And we used to have to kind of remind them how tough the restaurant industry was sometimes, and make them realize that, like, hey, at some point, if you're going to keep pushing your price that high, I am going to have to go elsewhere. And it's not because your product's not the best, it is, but we got to make a profit somewhere. But that was really rare. And like I said, they were as ethical as they could be about it, and I don't blame them for it. But that's something I've never experienced here. In fact, like, Brooke gave me grief this summer because I withheld information about product that I had that was less than ideal. I think my experience here has been pretty stellar so far.
That's great.
But I mean, that's one of those things where I think that's why it can't be stressed enough that having a relationship and having a community around food in your area is so important. Because creating those conversations, I don't expect, those farmers that I dealt with in the past who started to really leverage their position, had they not had a close personal relationship with myself and other chefs in the community, they might not have even known what that was doing to our community. So it's all about facilitating honest, open communication.
Rob, I'm wondering, have you ever reached out to Hanson Lamb in Kyla?
I've not.
They do sell I think Lower Valley processes their lamb, and I know nothing about the meat industry, and I don't even know if you use lamb, but I'm curious, like, if you talk to someone like that and there was a way you could utilize, like, can you take frozen product and, like, I don't know, slaughtering, I don't know. Scott might just be a good guy to talk to out there. I can
Yeah,
send you
absolutely. I'll definitely have to reach out. I use lamb when I can. One of the things that I'm kind of fettered to, sadly, is because I'm serving so many people one dish, I have to be really careful. My big blunder my first year was my favorite dinner that I was doing was a duck breast. And I very quickly, I think I was too stubborn to get rid of it in the first month, but it was like by week 5 of family season, I had to scrap that dinner because, every single time I served that dinner, out of the 140 plates I'm putting out, 80 of them came back and they asked for, chicken tenders. So I have to kind of pick and choose. Now, that being said, I found ways to, like, I served lamb this year just on one of the buffets, I'd like to do it for dinner, but we'll see.
So we need a poultry processor.
Yeah, I
And
mean
then
that's
chicken fingers.
yeah. Well, and that's my favorite thing to point out to people. I remember, so at the restaurant that I was at in Richmond, every time we broke down a bunch of chickens, we'd pull the tenders off and pickle brine them and fry them for staff meal. And the servers would always ask, why can't our normal chicken tenders be like that? And I had to explain to them, like, you realize, these kids that come in that want chicken tenders, they need like 6 of them on their plate, and that's 3 birds. Like the volume that requires is, I'm not going to process all those chickens.
But like a commercial chicken tender, you just grind up the whole bird, you throw in some sawdust, some glue, and then you reconstitute a chicken tender. You're thinking about this the wrong way.
It's flaxseed. It's organic flaxseed.
Yeah. I'll just have to find a way to, I wonder what the, I don't know, like more responsible version of that is. Like, how do I process in my kitchen all the unused bits that I typically just throw in the stock bin? How do I turn that into homemade artificial chicken tender?
Got to give the customer what they want.
Yeah, right. I
That's right.
think it would be easier. Oh my God.
Well, I'm gonna go eat dinner.
Yeah. Okay.
Chicken tenders.
Enjoy your pork.
Yeah. Thanks. Nice to see you all.
Good to see you. Take care.
Great conversation. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate
Yeah,
you
of course.
joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. This is great.
Yeah. Okay, we'll be in touch.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
take care.